The Forest Lawn Memorial Park sat under a blanket of California fog on that cold morning in March 2015. 6 years had passed since the King of Pop was laid to rest, yet the mystery surrounding his final resting place had only deepened. Detective Sarah Chen stood before the bronze doors of the Great Mausoleum, her badge feeling heavier than usual. She had spent 2 decades solving cases, but nothing prepared her for this moment. Anonymous letters had arrived at her precinct for months, each one claiming Michael Jackson's coffin held secrets that would shake the entertainment industry to its core. At first, she dismissed them as the work of conspiracy theorists. But when forensic analysis linked the letters to someone inside Jackson's inner circle during his final days, everything changed. The court order in her hand granted unprecedented access to examine the sealed crypt. Jackson's family had fought this decision with every legal weapon available, but the judge ruled that potential evidence of foul play outweighed their privacy concerns. As Sarah walked through the marble halls, her footsteps echoed like a heartbeat. The mausoleum keeper, an elderly man named Thomas, led her team to a private chamber where only family members had been allowed. The air felt thick with reverence and dread. Behind a wall of white marble, sealed with Jackson's name in gold letters, lay the casket that millions had mourned over. Thomas inserted an ancient-looking key into a hidden lock, and the wall began to slide open with a grinding sound that seemed to protest this intrusion. Sarah's team of 3 forensic specialists stood ready with their equipment, cameras, and collection kits. But none of them were prepared for what awaited them inside. The chamber revealed itself slowly, like a curtain rising on a forbidden stage. Dim lights flickered on automatically, casting long shadows across a room that seemed frozen in time. The casket rested on a raised platform, surrounded by flowers that had somehow remained preserved, their petals still holding color despite the years. Sarah approached carefully, each step measured and deliberate. The casket itself was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, made from solid bronze with intricate details depicting musical notes and dancing figures. But something was immediately wrong. The seal around the edges showed signs of tampering. Fresh scratches marked the metal where someone had attempted to open it before. Sarah's pulse quickened as she photographed the evidence. Who had been here, and when? Her team worked silently, documenting every detail before the moment of truth arrived. When they finally released the locks and began lifting the heavy lid, a strange sound escaped from within, like air being released from a pressurized chamber. The seal broke with an audible crack that made everyone freeze. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she helped raise the lid completely. What lay inside defied all logical explanation. The casket was lined with white satin, just as expected, but the body was positioned in a way that suggested movement had occurred after burial. Michael Jackson's face, partially visible beneath a delicate veil, appeared different from the photographs taken at his funeral. More unsettling were the objects placed around him, items that had never been mentioned in any official burial records. A leather journal rested on his chest, bound with a clasp that bore a symbol none of them recognized. Beside it lay 3 sealed envelopes, each marked with a different name from Hollywood's most powerful circles. But the discovery that made everyone in the room go completely silent was clutched in his left hand that a small recording device, no larger than a cigarette lighter, rested in Michael Jackson's palm. The technology was modern, far too recent to have been placed there during the original burial in 2009. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Someone had opened this coffin before, recently enough to leave behind 21st-century electronics. She carefully extracted the device, handling it like it might explode at any moment. Her forensic tech, Marcus, examined it under a portable light. The device was still functional, its small display showing a battery life of 15%. With gloved hands, Sarah pressed the play button. The voice that emerged was unmistakably Michael Jackson's, but it carried a weight of exhaustion and fear that his public persona never revealed. The recording began with heavy breathing, as if he had been running or was in intense distress. Then came words that would haunt everyone present for the rest of their lives. He spoke about threats he had received, naming specific individuals who wanted him silenced. He detailed financial schemes involving billions of dollars, manipulation of his catalog rights, and a conspiracy that extended far beyond anything the public suspected. His voice cracked with emotion as he described feeling trapped, knowing too much about powerful people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. The recording lasted 17 minutes, each second more devastating than the last. Michael spoke directly to whoever might find this message, apologizing to his children and explaining that if anyone was hearing this, it meant his fears had come true. He had recorded this message 2 weeks before his death, he said, and had given it to one trusted person with instructions for what to do if anything happened to him. That person had clearly fulfilled their promise. The journal contained pages filled with Michael's handwriting, dates, times, and detailed accounts of meetings that were never supposed to be documented. Sarah sat in the chamber reading through entries that painted a picture of a man who had accidentally stumbled upon something massive and terrifying. It started with a simple accounting discrepancy in his business dealings, something small that most people would have overlooked. But Michael, meticulous about his finances after years of being taken advantage of, had followed the thread. What he discovered was a network of entertainment industry executives, financial institutions, and even government officials working together in schemes involving money laundering, blackmail, and the systematic exploitation of artists. Michael had documented everything, naming names and providing evidence through photographs, copies of contracts, and recorded conversations. He had been gathering this information for years, initially to protect himself, but gradually realizing the scope went far beyond his own situation. The 3 sealed envelopes contained copies of evidence, each set meant for a different recipient who Michael hoped would act on the information if he could not. But the most disturbing entry came from June 2009, just weeks before his death. Michael wrote that he had been approached by representatives of the people he was investigating. They knew what he had discovered and offered him a choice that was not really a choice at all. They wanted him to stop his preparations for the comeback tour, to quietly retire, and to hand over all evidence he had collected. In return, they would guarantee his safety and his children's future. If he refused, they made it clear that accidents could happen, that someone as frail and dependent on medication as he was could easily slip away, and the world would accept it as the inevitable end of a troubled genius. Michael's final journal entry was dated June 24, 2009, the day before he died. His handwriting was shaky, urgent, filled with the desperation of someone who knew time was running out. He wrote that he had made his decision to move forward with exposing everything during his concert series, using his global platform to reveal the truth to millions of fans simultaneously. He planned to make announcements between songs, to display documents on massive screens, to turn his comeback tour into the most important whistleblowing event in entertainment history. But that morning, he wrote, his security had been changed without his authorization. New people surrounded his home, people he did not recognize or trust. His doctor, Conrad Murray, was acting strangely, insisting on medication protocols that Michael questioned. He wrote that he was hiding this journal and the recording device, that he had arranged for someone to place them in his coffin if the worst happened. His final words were not about music or legacy, but about truth and justice. He asked whoever found these items to please protect his children first, then to make sure the world knew he did not simply fade away from addiction and poor health. Sarah closed the journal, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. The evidence before her was explosive enough to destroy careers, topple companies, and potentially implicate people in a death that had been ruled accidental. But as she looked around at her team's shocked faces, she knew they faced an impossible choice. The powerful people named in these documents still held their positions, still had unlimited resources to protect themselves. Going public meant putting targets on their backs and potentially endangering Jackson's children. Yet staying silent meant betraying everything Michael had sacrificed to document. In that moment, standing in the chamber where the king of pop lay silent, Sarah made a decision that would define her career and possibly her life. She carefully gathered every piece of evidence, sealed it according to protocol, and walked out of Forest Lawn knowing that the Real investigation was just beginning. The world thought it knew how Michael Jackson's story ended, but the truth, she now understood, was far more complex and dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The silence in that room when they opened his coffin was not just shock at what they found. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of realizing that some secrets are kept not because they are unknown, but because revealing them would change everything.